My name is Tine Thygessen. I'm from Aalborg originally. I grew up there and I did most of my schooling. I left pretty early on. When I was 19, I moved to Italy and ended up staying almost 10 years away from Denmark. I ended up in Australia where I had my own company, which I sold last year. And after that, I moved back to Denmark. So I'm kind of a new Dane, or almost an immigrant, if you would say. It's been a lot of years where I haven't been speaking Danish and where I haven't been around. While I was in Australia, I started a company. I figured out quite early on that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And when I was in Australia, I'd finally learned enough to be able to venture into it. So I started a small company which sold design products to the event and hospitality industry. It was just a small business, but I managed to find a small niche where we had virtual monopoly and a system that was cash flow positive. Because it was an online business, e-commerce, we were serving a massive of companies at the end, some of the very big ones, the top banks and the top event companies, also international ones when they came to Australia. As anyone who's as transient as I am, it tends to freak you out a little bit when you get too committed. So I started, I suppose, voicing that I was considering what to do and what would be the right thing. And then I was so lucky that two companies approached me and said they were interested in buying it. One of my suppliers and one of my clients. So I was in an ideal position to be able to make the decision. I started up actually in investment banking in London. So the total opposite. My first real job was for Fidelity Investment, which had at the time like 20,000 employees worldwide. So totally not the small startup. And I was so lucky that after I moved on to that, I got to work in international private banking, where I was working with some totally amazing entrepreneurs, people who had 100 companies, who'd built up shipping companies. And it was so inspiring to meet these people and see how they'd crafted this. I never realized that it was possible for one person to create that much in a lifetime. And that's what drives me. I'm not that interested in the money, I'm interested in the phase of creation. And I decided at that point that I was done with big companies, but of course I didn't know anything about how to start a small one. So I started this journey, and over the coming 5 years I started taking jobs not for the money, but where I could learn what I needed to learn. It took about 5 years, a few different jobs in New Zealand and some jobs in Australia. I started going to smaller and smaller companies, trying to get into some different roles. And in the end, I thought that I was ready to start on my own. Of course, you never realize that there's a million things that you don't know before you actually do it, but you can't, and you just have to jump out into it. To me, the most important thing was fear. I had to come to a point where I was ready to fail, that I was going to be able to stand up afterwards and say, okay, that is not a reflection of me, that is a reflection of being an entrepreneur, and if you don't take the chance of failing, you also don't take the chance of winning. So when I started the company, I knew 100% that if I run this into the ground, I'm fine. That is a part of the process. And I think failing and giving yourself, allowing yourself to make mistakes is a huge part of becoming better, not just as an entrepreneur. And that's something, again, where in Denmark, we're not really brought up to think like that. We are brought up to play it a little bit safe. And I think people should just go out there and take some risks, do some stupid things, because failing teaches you so much more than winning and doing everything right. It's mad. It's totally crazy, because you don't really feel that you're coming home. Like, your home has been other places. For me, it's been London and New Zealand and Australia for as long as I can more or less remember. And I think I was quite open to the fact that this may not work. I was afraid that Denmark was going to be too small, but both geographically, but also that the mindset wasn't ready for entrepreneurs and for the big movements and for the drama that I think is important for doing anything successfully. But it's turned out really well. Most of my friends and my associates here in Denmark are entrepreneurs or really interesting, risky people who do lots of interesting stuff that isn't standard. Venture Cup is the entrepreneurship competition in Denmark. If you're at university and you have an idea and you want to do something with it, Venture Cup is the place you need to go. We set some deadlines for you and we can help motivate you, but most importantly, we can facilitate the contact to investors, to people who've done it themselves, to important business people, all the people that you need to move on fast in your venture, which would take you years to establish by yourself. We have two goals in Venture Cup. The first one is that we need to spread the thought of entrepreneurship as a valid way of living, and then we want to find the real companies with high growth potential. Yeah, the main criteria is that one person on the team has to be connected to a university, so that can be a student or a PhD or a scientist, so it doesn't have to be everyone in the team like most people believe. And then you can't have raised more than 250,000 in external capital. We start out quite easily in autumn, where you just need to send in 2 to 3 page idea, just so you can get a taste for it and you can get some feedback and find out if it's something for you. And then in spring, we run another competition, which is a little bit harder, where you have to send in a 10 to 20 page business plan. And this is where we start seeing some of the very serious entrepreneurs and some of the companies, and that's when we can really start giving them some value and some feedback. And then in the end, there's one lucky winner, which wins 250,000 Danish kroner. So that's a pretty nice little startup capital, especially these days where it's so hard to raise external capital. Entrepreneurship should never be about the money. It's about the passion. We know that what we really offer is the interaction with the real market. All of our ideas are evaluated by juries, and the juries are investors, serial entrepreneurs, and really senior business people. I think that the fact that we can put you in touch with people who are lawyers and entrepreneurs and patent advisors and guys from top companies, that's where you really get the value, and that's what no one else can offer right now. At the moment we're focusing a lot on clean tech, and we're definitely seeing a lack in the pipeline there. There's a lot of hype about clean tech at the moment in the media, but despite that, we only got 6% of our ideas last year were clean tech. And if that has to go in and replace IT or biotech, like a lot of people are thinking, then we really need to up that, because it is also a question of having quantity in the beginning so we can find the best. So we're working on creating a Nordic venture, which is called a Nordic Clean Tech Cup, which will be the best clean tech ideas, typically in the pre-seed phase, that compete on a Nordic level, which means that we're going to be able to take 25 best. We work on a 1 in a million concept. There's 25 million inhabitants in the Nordics. Therefore, we pick the 25 best companies. And there's a really hot upgrade program where we put them in touch with the best of the best, and then we make sure to expose them internationally. To team up with someone who knows something else than you. There's no doubt. That's the best teams. They're the ones that get the furthest in Venture Cup, and they're the ones that get the furthest in real life. We can see that because we track our alumni. So if you're an engineer, team up with someone who knows something about commerce, and the other way around. It's hugely important, and until you're at the situation where you need to sell something, you don't realize how important it is.